Hello and welcome to this video lesson on handwriting analysis and ink chromatography. But before we begin, let's review our learning and language goals for this lesson. Our learning goals for this lesson are: I can make inferences or hypotheses, I can record observations, and I can relate evidence to inferences or hypotheses and to a source. And our language goals are: I can talk about handwriting using words like loops, dots, joins, and graphology. And I can talk about ink using words like solvent, pigment, and chromatography. Forensic scientists use a variety of different characteristics to analyze handwriting. This technique is also called graphology, from the ancient Greek root word grapho, which means writing, and logos, which means knowledge. Chromatography is the separation of a mixture into its different parts using a liquid. When we use this technique on ink, we call it ink chromatography, and we separate the ink into its different pigments. Pigment is just another word for color. Forensic scientists will use a variety of solvents to separate the ink, but since we're using water-soluble inks, we will be using water as our solvent. Graphology is the analysis of the different components of a sample of handwriting. Some of the indicators used in comparing handwriting samples are the spacing and slant of the letters, the spacing of the words, the pressure on the page, how hard are you pushing, formation of the loops in letters such as L, O, capital L and capital O, especially in cursive handwriting, F, P, especially in cursive handwriting, lowercase, and capital B, again, mostly in cursive writing is where we see those loops. The dotting of the letter I and J in lowercase, and the crossing of the letter T in lowercase. How are the letters joined? And again, this is more important in cursive handwriting than it is in printing. They also look at uncommon factors like, does someone use a combination of printing and cursive handwriting? The formation of less common letters that are used less often, the size of the words and letters, and of course, they also look at the kind of writing tool that was used. Here's an image of two samples of the name Casey written on two different days by the same person. The gray word was found at the scene of a crime, and the red word was taken from the suspect at a later date. Look at how similar the two words are in the four ways highlighted here. First, we can see that the first stroke of the two letter C's match almost perfectly. So that first stroke that the person who did this writing sample took with their pen or pencil. Next, we see that the right edge of the letter C ends to the left of the letter A, so there's a larger space between those letters. The third thing we notice is the way the letter S is formed. It's the same in both the red and the gray samples, and it's a somewhat uncommon way to see this letter written. And finally, the spacing between all the characters, the connections, and the size of the letters are all very similar. Based on this evidence, what do you think we can infer? Well, I think we are safe to infer that the two Caseys were written by the same person. To create your own handwriting sample, you'll write a sentence called a pangram out several times on a piece of paper. And a pangram is just a unique sentence that uses all the letters from A to Z at least once. A very common one is the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Suspects are asked to write the pangram in all lowercase letters, all uppercase letters, and just their standard writing to show how they make each of the letters in the alphabet. I'm going to encourage all of you, if you only printed, try to write the pangram using cursive handwriting, because there's a lot more factors to look at with cursive handwriting than there is with just printing. But you want to make sure your sample has your standard writing, all uppercase and all lowercase letters, as well as try that cursive handwriting. As I said earlier, chromatography is a technique used for separating mixtures, and ink is just a mixture of water if it's a water-soluble ink, or some inks are made with other solvents like alcohol. But again, we're using only water-soluble markers. And so the ink in the marker is a mixture of the solvent, water, and then pigments that give it the color. Forensic scientists use a variety of solvents to compare inks from different writing tools. So, for example, if they wanted to analyze some ink that was an alcohol based ink, they couldn't use water as a solvent to separate it out. Since we're using water soluble markers, we'll use water as our solvent to separate black ink into its different colors and then compare our results to a sample from the crime scene. Here's how to perform your own ink chromatography experiment. First, gather your materials. You need a glass with a small amount of water in it, and a taller glass is better than a shorter glass. You need a black water-soluble marker, a coffee filter or white paper towel, something to secure the paper inside the glass, for example, tape. You might use a paper clip maybe if you don't have any tape handy. Here are the steps to follow. You're going to cut the coffee filter or paper towel into a long, thin strip, about 2 or 3 centimeters wide and 8 or 10 centimeters long, and then color a dot of black ink near the bottom. You may choose to also draw a line of black ink near the bottom, and you want to do it about 1 centimeter from the edge, the bottom edge of your test strip. Next, secure the paper strip to the inside of the glass with the bottom of the paper just touching the surface of the water. You don't want to dunk it in the water, just have it just barely touch the surface of the water. Believe me, that's more than enough water. Then secure the paper and wait 5 to 10 minutes and then make your observations. And here's a picture of an ink chromatography experiment in action. To make your case file, remember these steps. 1. Take a picture of each of your samples. 2. Insert the picture in the correct page in your case file. 3. Don't forget all 4 samples: fingerprints, footprints, handwriting, and ink chromatography. And last but not least, check out the exemplar to see what success looks like in this assignment. Here you can see the footprint record. We have a left footprint and a right footprint. And this student has filled in the appropriate information to describe these shoes, how long they are, what size that correlates to approximately, whether or not there's a brand logo evident, and other details like a wear pattern or any damage. For our fingerprints, we have all 10 prints, and we have details on the different kinds of patterns on each one of the 10 fingerprints. The writing sample is included with notes about the form, the lines, the arrangement, and paying special attention to crossing of letters, dotted letters, and capital letters. Finally, we have a picture of the chromatography results and the notes that we made following our chromatography experiment. And last but not least, a mugshot of our suspect with information. Now, Elvis did this work. You're going to do your own picture and your own information for your criminal profile.